in America.
Even had he not served this country, even if he were not a combat veteran, to turn something like this loose on a family, I mean, it's monstrous.
The media was out there in droves.
I went into a very deep depression, like suicidal depression. The only thing that kept me alive was my son.
We always knew that we somehow had to get through it because we wasn't guilty.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface. But I can see the shoreline, and I started to swim.
And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vandersteel, and welcome to Steel News. You have now entered the war zone. You know, every day, I got to tell you guys, it's harder and harder sometimes to get up and get off the mat and just keep fighting. I think we're all really tired. And, you know, I look around the landscape. I look at the colleagues that I've gotten to know and trust across my media landscape. And there's so few left now that I really confide in anymore. But one of them definitely is. And I can't necessarily call him a colleague, but I definitely call him a friend, somebody I've gotten to know when I was first introduced to in 2016 out in Colorado at a conservative meetup. And that is General Flynn, General Michael Flynn. He was talking about local action having a national impact back then. And this is prior to him becoming the national security advisor for President Trump. He was a trusted confidant, somebody who traveled with the president and did rallies with the president right after President Trump became the official nominee for the RNC in July of 2016. It has been an incredible ride, a wild ride. And we've watched one man be persecuted more than anybody I've ever seen. And I think you all would agree. There are many people out there who have been coming for General Flynn for quite some time, and they look at him as a giant threat. And we've all heard the story of Barack Obama warning President Trump about General Flynn. Well, clearly General Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. And I hate to use that expression because it sounds like a throwaway line at a Washington, D.C. cocktail party. But at the end of the day, this man rose up in intelligence and 30 plus years serving his country. There's nobody that is more persecuted than General Flynn. And I mean nobody. And anybody who affiliates, associates, uplifts, or support is also persecuted. And I can't even tell you how many so-called intelligence operatives, and I use air quotes here, intelligence operatives have come out of the woodworks to confide in me or slide into my DMs on Twitter or send me an email or whatever it is, including death threats that my kids have received. I feel that this has just gone way beyond the pale with where we need to be as a country right now. We should be Americans coming together as Americans. We should be isolating ourselves from these foreign entanglements. We shouldn't be sending money overseas. The trillions of dollars that Catherine Austin Fitts is talking about that have been laundered through the federal government and lining the coffers of the same cabal that is after General Flynn is sickening. If you missed the Catherine Austin Fitts clips today on X, you can find it on my X feed right now. Startling how much money has been lost. Remember all that DOD money? Well, General Flynn probably has a pretty good idea where a lot of this is, but he's been out there pounding the pavement. Recently put a movie out, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. We're going to talk with producer Scott Weiper today. What an extraordinary career he's had. I'm going to just put up on the screen just some of the movies he's been known for in the past that you may recognize. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is somebody who set aside his relationships in Hollywood at his own peril, his own expense, because like me, like millions of you, he wants to deliver the truth, whatever the cost. And we're going to talk about the cost to him, his career, and where he's going. I know there's a lot of talk about Hollywood 2.0. I speak with a publicist on the regular who is very involved with a lot of the Hollywood actors, A-list actors, in fact, that are sick of the Hollywood of the past, the CIA, MK-controlled cabal that is. And they really do want to save this country. They see the light clearly. Or they see through a lens now because the light is shining brightly on just how diabolical these people have been. So without further ado, I want to bring on the stage now Scott Wiper, somebody who I am going to enjoy getting to know for the first time along with you today. Scott, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me this afternoon. I have a lot of questions, and I just kind of want this conversation to flow as naturally as it can.
Thank you for having me, Ann. And that was a great intro over everything. General Flynn, the movie, the state of things, the state of Hollywood.
Well, I think by now, I mean, a lot of people that are finally awake, Scott, are looking at Hollywood and going, wow, they have been telling us all this time what they are doing to us and what they plan to do to us. I think Hollywood has been in on it because, of course, it is a CIA. It's a facsimile of the CIA with just, fancy, sexy, hot stars as window dressing, but they've all been mind controlled to deliver information so that we swallow it and just come to expect it. So when it happens, we're like, yeah, that's what the government's supposed to do. We're supposed to do this, or they're supposed to be able to do that. But, you stepped out of that space along with several others. I know Mike Smith for one, and a few others to kind of combat that. And those that do, Mel Gibson included, just get shellacked. So I guess the first question for you, when you put this movie forward and people from your industry found out, what were the phone calls on your end coming in like?
Well, there's a lot of silence, there's because, and that is a good thing, and I'll explain why. But I have a constant feeling when I came to know Mike Smith this summer, and I look at some of the pioneers that actually went first, and I sometimes have a sense of, and this is just how I am, kind of as I felt like I was late, right? It's that. So could I have done more? What if I jumped into the game earlier? So every time I run into one of those other filmmakers or people from Hollywood, I thank them for busting through and taking the leap long before I did. But there's something I call the silence, and I am an optimist. And I got to the point with this, doing something within this community because I wanted to be. There's a side of me that's like, well, it was just so clear. You want to be on the right side of history so you can look yourself in the mirror,
right.
and not vomit, right? You want to have a sense of, and creative people have that. That's in most of them, whether you're a guitarist, a songwriter, a stand-up comedian, a screenwriter, a director, actor, you took the road less traveled, let's say shortly out of high school or during high school, and because you were a rebel, right? And so there's something in the DNA of most Hollywood creatures that I feel a bit of torture. And whereas they would have just kind of gone at you like a little chihuahua, maybe 3 years ago, there's this eerie silence that I interpret as positive because they're being quiet and they're thinking. And I have enough examples of people then reaching out to me who I know are far left of center, but it's usually the ones I know, like they have a good brain. They have time to research, but they'll just say, Scott, can I talk to you about your movie? I said, absolutely. A filmmaker loves that. And it's got my brain thinking. And that call comes like sometimes a month after they watched it. So that it's not like, because it's like, if there's those that they've been fighting for General Flynn or been on his side for a long time, side of the truth. And then there are those that just, we're deprogramming people's brains, right? So I tell people who want it now, we all want it now. We want instant gratification. And definitely as a movie maker, you want that. Then if it was just a thriller or just for entertainment, people go, oh, wow, it was great. That was great. But when the most gratification comes from, as I said, when the general and I first talked, my suggestion was to not preach to the choir. But that's why the movie goes heavy on the war theme in the first 20 minutes, because that's a unifying thing. And we'll see more and more of that with Donald Trump and these endless wars, the choice of peace. But the most gratifying thing is when someone who's watched the movie, I see it click and they want to have a deeper conversation because a quote I had was like, I'm questioning a lot of things because what I can see inside them is, well, if all of these corporate media outlets lied to me about General Flynn, then what else did they lie to me about? And inevitably, I think I see them thinking about maybe too many shots and boosters they put in themselves that they were told were absolutely safe and effective, and many other things, including the wars that were sold to them. So that was the goal as a storyteller and as a filmmaker and as a screenwriter, right? Because it was figuring out how to unlock people's brain to begin, as Mike Smith did so geniusly, to make that switch happen where they start questioning the corporate narrative.
And that's what I think the movie does a great job of getting people to get their gears grinding, right? And, for some of us who've been awake for a while now, we are so far out in front and our lens is so crystal clear when we're looking at things. And I can clearly see there's so much dis and misinformation out there intentionally being presented, even by the good guys, by the way, that some days you wake up and you're like, I've got to just not even read the news. I can't even look at X. I've just got to keep moving forward with what I know to be the right thing. And I read this all the time. I reference the Constitution. I look at what the government's putting forward with their fake corporate overlay of US codes, which is not our laws. That is for them to be governed by. And I really try to look through it at a very clear, purist, freedom fighting lens. And I get frustrated big time because I feel like the majority of the people, don't care. They don't want to wake up because all they care about is turning on football. It's football season again. So everywhere you go, you can't go to a restaurant or a bar without seeing football on. And they just don't care. But if you start to figure out how to get a conversation with somebody, majority of the people are pro-freedom. They may not like Trump, but it's like, well, what choice do we have? So they're going to vote for him. Most of the people down here where I live are very pro-Trump. But in certain areas, you see people just sort of capitulating. But when you try to have a conversation about General Flynn, I'm shocked at how many people just don't even know the story. They just think, well, didn't Trump fire him? I'm like, well, there's a lot more to it, and I feel like there's just so much more. They just, they believe this Russian collusion narrative, and some people have it confused and conflated with that Flynn is the whole reason Trump got tagged. And they don't understand it was all an FBI lie, and a fake 302 and, everything. I mean, everything, our history has been completely lied to and obfuscated and conflated so that people just don't know the truth. That, again, going back to the constant fire in all directions of information war, telling you the truth and lies and everything in between. So your job as a filmmaker, to me, is to try and really get people that thought they knew the story to go, holy cow, I didn't realize it was this deep. And for those that never heard of it, or for that matter, didn't even know who General Flynn was, now go, whoa. I mean, and there was times in that movie, I know the story intimately well, reported on it for the last, so many years since 2017. And I cried in the movie. I was just, especially when Ivan Raiklin got all choked up, I was like, oh my God. And now, of course, the haters of Ivan Raiklin are going to come and attack me for that. Because, of course, we're all Russian disinformation people at this point. It's like insanity what's going on right now. So what does your inbox look like? Seeing that all this disinfo, misinfo, are you getting the hate mail? Are you getting the death threats? Are you getting, any of that? Or are you truly getting people going, wow, thank you. You woke me up?
Well, the people saying thank you, and this is overwhelms any negativity that I receive.
That's great.
And I think it was an exercise. It was a lesson called a PhD, or at least a master's in psychological warfare, right? Because I remember I gave in 2020, going into that election, I gave a fairly sizable donation to the Trump campaign, and I remember panicking, thinking that someone was going to uncover that, and it. You go, I think back to 2016 when I'll be voting for Donald Trump for the third time this November. But and I do this to have empathy for those that are going through their metamorphosis right now. But so I remember beginning, there was fear. I won't call it fear, but your protective instincts kick in. You don't trust anybody. but that is what these globalists have done, especially in a city like Los Angeles, which is there's a lot of bark and very little bite, knock on wood. But so there was more negativity at the start, and then as far as my inbox, I started filtering it out, and I am an optimist, and it has been, I went in a different psychological set, which is kind of like, well, for now I'm doing a breakup with Hollywood, and I did it in the sense I've said I couldn't live with myself.
Your terms. Yes.
And I was quiet, no one knew I was doing this with the general for months, so, yes, you get hit, but I felt like I was late to the game in the sense of we've got to save this country. So I just that's the athlete in me. I was just, and I get it.
Yes. And for those that don't know, you lettered in football at Wesleyan. I didn't add that into your intro, but yeah, you were quite an athlete in college and played with some pretty significant people too.
Eric Mangini, Bill Belichick, but I was called Wesleyan University, was like glorified high school, but it was Division III. But I was an art major. But it's funny in Hollywood when I'm asked what's the most important thing that prepared you for Hollywood, I always say playing 4 years of college football.
You got to take some hits.
You got to take the pain. You got to take the rejection. You got to keep going. You've got to get up after defeat and keep going. Go ahead.
No, that's great. It's good stuff. So you've had the movie has some significant, folks that were, part of telling the story of General Flynn. Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, of course, Ivan Raiklin, Tracy Beans, his family. Talk to me about some of the people that you thought were most impactful in delivering the truth about who General Flynn is and why it is so important to the establishment, the global establishment, to make sure he never returns into any sort of government position for fear of what he knows.
Yeah, the call it the casting, right? Who's going to go on camera in this movie? It was invitations were put out, and I'd say, and it was really, we're not coming to you. We weren't running around the country. We set up a studio in Venice, Florida, and those that were passionate.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Those who were passionate came, and we put out invitations to people across the spectrum. But, example, Adam Lovinger. I remember I was very impressed by him because I nicknamed him the real Jack Ryan, right?
Yep.
And, I'm going back to optimism, and there's a fascinating thing that Adam Lovinger explains in the movie, that Russiagate was like this bear trap that was set up in 2010. By Stephen Halper and others. But it's interesting that weapon, which was Russiagate, all right, well, that bear trap is in your backyard, and now it's no longer active. It's a weapon that has been expended. So there's been great exposure through this process. But and yes, you mentioned Ivan Raiklin, who I've come to know very well. He goes to all the screenings and the tour, but and that moment when Ivan choked up was very typical. Even when you played the trailer, which I hadn't watched in a while, I felt this wave of emotion because I was coming in and I was not. John Flynn said he wasn't a fan, meaning referring to me. No, but it wasn't that. As I tried to come in as a former California Democrat and absorb the facts and the timeline, and maintain my objectivity, and inevitably as I absorbed this story and living at a Best Western down in Venice, Florida, I would get hit with this wave of emotion. So, because I was sitting down with Michael Jr., his son, Michael G. Flynn, and his wife Lori and his siblings, and I was on the phone with everyone in the movie, and I couldn't believe it. Like, just emotion. You can't make this stuff up, right?
Yeah.
So I would have this wave of just I can't. And that is where the humanity comes from in the film. What I'm trying to explain poorly, right, was this. I had this realization that the movie also had to get into the personal aspect of General Flynn and his family, because, and people say, well, you should have more people from the other side. I'm like, well, life in movies and journalism doesn't have to always be crossfire, where you have one person over here and they just argue. I'm like, the globalist media has had 3,000 hours. They had their shot, right? All through 17, 18, even before that, when he was in the Obama administration, they've had a chance. And what I saw was dehumanization, right? Now that's a technique in media that no living soul deserves to be dehumanized. And maybe there's a few caveats in our history. But when I saw that done to General Flynn, I thought we had to rehumanize him in the eyes of those that has consumed all that propaganda.
Right.
And because to me, that's monstrous. When you tell the public, this is not a human, right? And they do it to Donald Trump as well.
That's right.
So and those are things when say, well, you know, there's a lot of personal stuff. Yeah, that's right. Because people have to be reminded, whether they're still turning on their news or watching, alternative media and Rumble, that these are human beings.
Amen.
And when they get back to that point, they start thinking rationally.
And that's just where I don't know that we've gotten back to that point of thinking rational. And again, it goes back to the psychological warfare, the 5GW, as General Flynn and Boone Cutler publicized in their book, right? Fifth Generation Warfare. We as Americans are not accustomed to being upfront and center in a true war. We haven't seen war on our land since the Civil War. And I mean, yes, we've had riots in the cities, and I think we're about to see something in this country we haven't seen since the Civil War. I think it could get really, really bad, and who knows how bad, but it's going to get bad. I've done enough work down on the border to tell you that the bad guys are here. General Flynn is open about it. And this is all of the making and the construct of the people, the very same people who don't want General Flynn anywhere near a Trump presidency or any presidency for that matter. And, the people that I think that have been, monstrously responsible for subduing Americans' justice, besides the Department of Justice, is one of their own, the FBI. I want to play a clip real quick here, Scott, and get you to comment on it. But this is General Flynn calling to disband the FBI here. Take a listen.
Should bring charges against the bad guys. The case against Flynn had deep roots. When Flynn ran the Defense Intelligence Agency under Barack Obama, he clashed with the CIA. Flynn thought the CIA had been politicized by Obama and was covering up the truth about al-Qaeda. Clapper and Brennan hated him. McCabe hated him too, because Flynn offered to testify in a discrimination case against him. Obama intel guys wanted Flynn out so badly. They hired spies, Stefan Halper, to dirty him up with Russian smears. This was the same Halper who set Papadopoulos up. The FBI already had a case file open against Flynn when Trump won the election. It was called Operation Razor. New FBI notes show Flynn was clean, and field agents wanted to close the file on him. But Flynn was days away from having access to the nation's secrets and would have sniffed out Spygate. That's when James Comey sprung into action. Flynn was incoming national security advisor for Trump, and guys like Flynn always reach out to their foreign counterparts during the transition. Lame duck Obama had just slapped sanctions on Russia, so Flynn called the Russian ambassador and, among many other things, told him not to slap sanctions back on the United States. Nothing illegal about that conversation at all. But someone in the Obama administration illegally leaked the transcript of the classified phone call to the Washington Post and created this sketchy Russian cloud of smoke around Flynn. And James Comey comes in and uses the leaked conversation as an excuse to send FBI agents into the White House and set Flynn up. Comey even bragged about it.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine 2 FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration. The FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official. You would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
It's early enough. Let's just send a couple of guys over. I mean, when I look at James Comey's face, I realize there's nobody that needs to be, taken out to the woodshed and left on a deserted island by himself, and then slowly matriculate all the other, nefarious characters like John Brennan, James Clapper, Susan Rice, and so on and so forth. Of course, Obama, Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. This was diabolical from the word go. So General Flynn calling for the disbanding of the FBI, to me, makes perfect sense. I don't think there's many Americans out there today that would say, no, we shouldn't disband the FBI. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is it even salvageable at this point, or is General Flynn on the mark?
Like you mentioned, Hollywood, these entities, CIA, FBI, Wall Street, the medical industry, these are captured operations. I mean, it's the top. So, and I get tired of hearing, well, there's good people. And that is the truth. There's good people within captured operations, it's the upper echelons of these, including Hollywood, right? There's people feeding their family, and they're grips and gaffers, and there's actors that aren't famous or aren't controlled and manipulated. There's a lot of good people, but in the FBI, yes, I think it's coming. Absolutely. I mean, you can feel it.
Who's going to do it? Is Trump? I mean, because General Flynn wasn't at the RNC. I was at a Lincoln dinner last year, sitting at one of 2 General Flynn tables. I was Roger Stone was there. Jovan Hutton Pulitzer was sitting next to me. We had a great group of people. And President Trump was 20 yards from us, talking to Roger and to General Flynn, saying, stay healthy, get ready. We're going back. We're going back, to a room full of 1,000 people or more cheering. And yet we don't see evidence of General Flynn being brought into this administration. In your humble estimation, is this a sneak attack where you appoint General Flynn into a position where he has that sort of control to reorganize the intelligence community?
In my opinion, General Flynn is not finished. And when I say that, that's my analysis of both Donald Trump, who will be president, and Donald Trump's intelligence, and as you said, General Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. He knows a lot more than that. So it's one of those things to me where I can't wait, right? And I also watched the pattern of Donald Trump, starting when he came on the scene. He only takes on one battle at a time. If you remember, it's like first it's Jeb Bush, right?
Right.
And then he's making jokes. He loves Marco Rubio. He loves Ben Carson. And then boom, Jeb Bush down. Then he moves to the next one. And then it's Marco Rubio. And then boom. And he's very systematic, right? And he also is a master of media, at least how it relates to business and politics. So at this moment right now, we are in the RFK Jr. phase, right?
Yeah.
And his running mate, Shanahan. So we are in warfare, and I'd like to get back to that at one point. You said some
information warfare. No, absolutely. It's information war. Correct.
But I tell people just breathe and have patience, because this battle we're in, it's a war, right? But it's one battle at a time. And I can just say I can't fathom a scenario where Donald Trump does not utilize General Flynn to take down the deep state, as Donald Trump has said openly.
Right.
The establishment. But as far as narrative warfare, we are, even when you ask questions about Hollywood, where things to me were just so choices we make, we are at war, right? Now, some people will go, yeah, that sounds crazy. But, maybe there were people that didn't understand the Cold War was war until the Cuban Missile Crisis hit, right?
Right.
And in the 10 years before that, if someone had said, well, we're at war, but because people are programmed to think, oh, war is World War II with, tanks and troop movements, and it's on the news every night. And then we had to realize, okay, there's a new kind of warfare. And this is where everyone should read A Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, because that means that fifth generation warfare is where information is the primary weapon system, right? First generation was everything before gunpowder. World War II was third generation. After the atomic bomb, fourth generation. Now, your information was used in every war. But in the old days, if your troops, you didn't have enough troops and the enemy had tons, you built campfires all around the hillside to make it look like you were larger. That's information warfare. Deception. As Sun Tzu said, war is deception. So what many don't understand is we are at war right now.
Right.
Even as Trump said in March 2020, I consider myself a wartime president. I'm a wartime president against the invisible enemy. But so whether or not, quite often Trump's closest allies are not, you don't see it. Because he knows the moment it's public knowledge, not public knowledge, but on the news daily, and you're a Trump ally, you're going to get attacked, right? So sometimes people should just analyze it, right? Because and usually when all assets are deployed from the corporate media to go after his allies, it's one at a time. But this war we're in, and Donald Trump has also said, the American people have been victims of illegal psychological operations for the past 7 years. Now, it's longer than that, but it's been full tilt boogie, as they say, for 7 years. And, interesting things, the clips that they don't put on corporate news, and that was one of them. So we are at war. And it's an information war. And I'm also positive. I'm very positive, because if you actually pause and think back to just in your own life where people were 3 years ago, we take for granted how far we've come. And it's true. It's remarkable.
That's very true. I mean, I think back how far my knowledge base has come and how I've really shall we say, tighten the lens, and so I can see more clearly through the fog of information war. And I mean, of course, we still get ones pulled over on us, and we're innocently trying to, to get to the truth. But you make a compelling case there on this, the fact that the media does do a very good job of editing out, information that people could make better decisions from, i.e. President Trump talking about where, the government has illegally been weaponizing information and psychological warfare, something that General Flynn is quite frankly an expert in. And I recall him telling me a long time ago, and war is deception. And, we are in, as Michael Yon says, the highest state of war, which is information war. People on a sidebar here, and I want to get back to Kennedy here for a second, but on a sidebar, people say, why hasn't Iran attacked Israel? I mean, Israel has done all this provocative maneuvers, murdering people in their own, in Iranian territory. And Iran hasn't punched back. And then you have to look at the bigger picture. This is, to me, a banker's war between BRICS and the international banking cabal, which has controlled the United States and Western civilization for over 150 years, or longer, actually, when you start to really dial it back. But let's talk about modern times, quote, modern times. And to me, the BRICS nations are stabilizing themselves with real sound money, asset-backed currencies, and a basket of them. And we're still printing paper like it's toilet paper. We got fiat money like toilet paper. It means zero. And, President Trump launching out there saying he's going to do 100% tariffs on countries that don't take the dollar. To me, was so shocking. I'm like, well, we need to get our dollar squared away again before we can, walk away from countries that don't take it, because we don't have anything to offer. Why would they take paper? It's worth nothing, especially when they're, operating on gold backed or any other asset backed, financial system. It doesn't make sense. We have had our knees chopped out from underneath us. Bobby Kennedy, he is really all in now. He's made a big splash. In fact, since the announcement of JD Vance, Bobby Kennedy has really been sort of what I consider to be the unofficial sidecar to President Trump, because you rarely see anything with Trump and Vance at all. It's sort of like that's sort of faded off into the sunset. It's all Bobby all day. And he's talking about saving kids' health. Now, General Flynn and President Trump have been very much behind saving children. Flynn's America's Futures, and, part of his other, in his organization is all about saving kids. I want to play this clip, get your feedback on how you see General Flynn, sort of, is he going to be interacting in this capacity in the Trump administration, or is it strictly going to be intelligence? And does the intelligence cross over into the children?
For 19 years, I prayed every morning that God would put me in a position to end this calamity. This is a spiritual journey for me. I reached my decision through deep prayer, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health? I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
That's those are strong words. We really do need to choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. And General Flynn has always been a strong proponent of children since the day I met him. I've seen him, bring children to the front of the room and talk about this is the future. And frankly, he's right. Your thoughts on, the deep state, the position of, putting children front and center with a Trump/Kennedy message, and how does General Flynn play into that?
Well, as far as seeing Trump and Kennedy together right there, I actually think that's a long time in the making. I don't think these things are just spontaneous. Right there's a reason to have incredible hope, right? When you really think it through. And what's been going on, medically and with our food and with everything that RFK Jr. has been talking about, all the way to Anthony Fauci, which he put out, his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, which everyone should at least read a summary of, now that Anthony Fauci is a household name. But as far as how General Flynn plays into it, and the children, that is what unites everybody. I mean, that is, the biggest problem is when people really digest everything Bobby Kennedy is saying, and now that Donald Trump they're on the same message, including make America healthy again. That's not just about eat your fruits and vegetables. That's about we're being poisoned. We're up against, true evil. And what people are digesting is, in an early speech when a few years ago, General Flynn said, what hits me is the sobering reality that true evil exists. I'm paraphrasing, right? Yeah. And that is the block that many people have. And it's the goodness in them that you and I talked about. We all have to make these decisions, and we, in life, business decisions, and often we lean towards we trust, right? And that's what the American people have done, and people around the world, is that they can't fathom that true evil exists. So when you tell them, the pharmaceutical industry or almost every news outlet is working against you, they have to get over that. And these globalists, that's what they use against us, right? Our goodness. When they sell us Barack Obama, when they sell us a war in Ukraine, right? They always aim for our heart, right? Because they know that. So it's like, we've got to be there for the Ukrainian people, right? But every time we go in somewhere, and so that is kind of where I do search for the goodness in people, because that, unfortunately, when you get into a wartime situation, you have to put your armor on, because the enemy goes after your emotions and your heart. So even when you tell people they're poisoning your kids, that silence I was talking about, they're thinking, well, that would mean, basically, that would mean a conspiracy. That would mean 2 or more people are working together for nefarious means.
That's right. General Flynn knows about the people that have been working together for a long time. If you just stream through his X timeline, you get a real glimpse into, who this man is. I actually I was going to play an Adam Lovinger clip here, but I want to just pull up General Flynn's timeline, because hang on one second. Where is he? All right. Let's see if everybody can see this. And then I was going to actually pop over and just check Rumble real quick. Hey, Christy, my admin in Rumble, she's so fantastic. She's gotten the chance to meet General Flynn at Reawaken events. CPT Dodge talks about all of this being unrestricted warfare. Everything is in play. And it's true. It feels like everything is like a 52 card pickup game. All the cards are in the air, and we haven't seen where they're going to land. Are we aces high, jacks high, jokers wild? What's going on? But Christy's saying, dismantle the FDA, fire everyone, and rebuild it. And she agrees. People just do not wake up overnight, unfortunately. So, Christy, you're right about that. But taking a look at General Flynn's X right now, let's see here. Where do they go? He's even, he's hearkening back to the Bobby Kennedy days. He was a blue dog Democrat, right? His family was very much behind the Kennedys. And that was the original Camelot. And of course, this is who the deep state took out the Kennedys. And I applaud Bobby Kennedy, frankly, for being as vocal and as upfront as he is, because he's standing next to a guy that they just tried to kill last month or 6 weeks ago. President Trump, they tried to take him out. And General Flynn is still out here supporting people who are speaking truth to power on the corruption and the fraud that's still going on in our election system, which is a selection system, essentially. He's still standing by President Trump, although you don't see President Trump openly talking about General Flynn, which has got a lot of people, frankly, upset that they don't see, General Flynn right there flying flank on President Trump's right side. But you just said, we're in the Bobby Kennedy phase right now. So when you sit back and you look at the war is deception, yet General Flynn has never wavered his support for President Trump, not even one iota. When I see a lot of people wavering their support for Flynn or for Trump, what does that tell you about who his character really is?
Well, his character is second to none, and he's an American first. Even you'll see in the movie, it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat. He calls everybody out according to the truth and according to honor. So, when you're talking about when, some of your audience, they're rattled because Trump isn't mentioning General Flynn. When that moment happens, let's just go back to when Donald Trump tapped General Flynn as National Security Advisor, right? And others that haven't seen the movie, they forget that, he ran one of our largest intelligence agencies under Barack Obama. But all hell's going to break loose when that is the press release. And Donald Trump teams up again with General Flynn in some capacity. Maybe it's National Security Advisor, right? Maybe we'll have roles. There'll be new roles that for Bobby Kennedy, for General Flynn, that have not gone along the scenario of our other series of 4-year administrations. But we want, when that moment happens, right? We'll see. And you played a clip from Fox. I'll bring this full circle. Has Fox mentioned this movie?
No.
I've seen nothing.
I'm not a big Fox News watcher, but typically I do follow them on X. I never see them mention any of this stuff.
Well, I'll ask when we do screenings. I'll have a full packed room. Just say, has anyone seen anything on Fox? Because who's got the time, right, to watch? But Fox is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and there's good people on Fox, but they're still answering to Paul Ryan, right? Who's there, former Speaker of the House, right? The Murdoch family. So you can only do so much when your mandate is we only tell 75% of the truth, and we don't talk about these issues. But that's a very telling thing that and I'm not pointing out these individuals, but I don't hear Sean Hannity or Jesse Waters or even Greg Gutfeld during comedy mentioning that General Flynn right now. So, but when the moment comes where Donald Trump and General Flynn are going to be together and it's visible, all hell will break loose with the globalist media.
That's right.
So if I was a strategist in a wartime situation, I'd be like, let's make sure we're prepared when we put this out, because and let's not step on the noise of let's not step on the noise of Bobby Kennedy, right? And his running mate Shanahan's doing a great job because she sucked all the diehard liberals were like loved her, and she's doing a great job. So don't step on. Right. And Trump's been a master of stepping on, big, they have the Democratic National Committee, and then bam, he announces Bobby Kennedy Jr. And tomorrow night we have the debate, right? And so there's, at what point do you enter General Flynn back into the narrative? Because then everything else, whether it's good or bad for patriots, right? Meaning in the news cycles, that's going to be seismic. That's going to be a big one, because they fear General Flynn.
That's true. And it's been rather shocking to see some of the people I thought were, on the right side of history here, literally go after General Flynn as if they were butthurt because they didn't get another interview or whatever it is. It's really rather shocking. And I can't even tell you how many phone calls and text messages I've got telling me that I'm being duped. And I mean,
duped on what?
Duped because General Flynn's a bad guy. I mean, the nonsense started several years ago with a former Trump attorney, or someone who claimed, not a Trump attorney, but somebody, I hate to bring up his name, LW. I just don't even want to say it, but the nonsense coming out about, people who were, close to General Flynn proximity wise. Like myself, when I lived on the west coast of Florida, we became part of this thing called the Sarasota Syndicate. It was nonsense. I mean, just literally complete stuff made up to try and derail and deface and, of course, disillusion anybody that thought they had faith in somebody who has been for 35 years marching slowly and, methodically towards the truth and getting this out and recognizing we are literally turning around the Titanic inside the Panama Canal right now. The USS or USA is turning around in the Panama Canal, and we are coming about slowly but scraping the sides of the canal as we come through. And I'll be damned if we're not going to get that ship sailing in the right direction once and for all, and just offload all of the bad baggage from steerage or wherever these scumbags come from out of the deep state, and just get rid of them. Leave them on an island and get rid of them once and for all.
You mentioned the quasi-charming Southern attorney, that LW. And I credit him for motivating me to get involved in this movie. Right?
That's awesome.
And
well, we have something to be thankful for from that.
But because I only mention the past because it's happening now, right? And you have influencers, right? And they're very patient. They put in an entity, I'll call them entities. They might put in a year, 2, 3 years of building an audience.
Yep.
And that is your classic CIA method, which is 4 parts truth, 1 part deception, right?
Right.
Or it might be 9 parts truth, 1 part deception. But that these investments, LW put into a ton of time into gathering the evangelicals and that was the fascinating thing, where the attacks on General Flynn that persist today and increased when this movie came out, right?
That's right.
There's your mainstream media attacks, right? Well, he's right wing, he's a Christian nationalist, he's these terms are supposed to be bad. And then you have within the Patriot community on Telegram, on BitChute, Rumble, you've got these other people that are saying the exact opposite message, which he's a secretly deep state operative, still tied to Obama, right? And so during that 2021 period, that actually was, whoa, I had to dig in and figure this out, because I noticed suddenly people that I'd followed and just assumed were in the fight sincerely turned on General Flynn.
Yeah.
And now we have but the good news is they're getting called out much faster.
That's right.
Like 5 times faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And frankly, I credit them with a really well-run operation, except they're now desperate because people are waking up. And so they're getting sloppy. And their frequency of expending their ammunition has gotten closer and closer together. So, that sine wave where it was sort of slow, it's starting to look like this because the desperation is there. And as some 17th letter of the alphabet once said, and I remember this because I didn't follow the boards, all assets deployed. Well, they are, and then they're part of the assets being deployed. And of course, people like me early on that had shows way back in the day in 2016, 2017, when there was really nobody doing shows, were easy prey to become useful idiots because we had a huge platform. And and trying to learn the truth, sometimes you invite the enemy into your territory because you're just trying to figure out who they are and what they stand for. And like you said, a good CIA operation will be 9/10 truth and 1/10 complete fabrication, but guilt by association. And that's what the mainstream media took on. Anybody that I ever interviewed that came from the Q world, unfortunately, branded me as some QAnon conspiracy theorist. Well, if you're a real diehard Q person, QAnon is not a real thing. But if you are a diehard Q person, God bless you. I don't have time to read that stuff. I'm literally just not even reading the news. I'm looking at a lot of other things, better sources than the mainstream media to try and figure out what's going on. And I'm not going to wait for somebody to pop popcorn and watch a movie. I want to be a player. I want to be participating, and I want to be activating people and, delivering calls to action so that we can restore the republic to true common law and true freedom as God's law, the law of nature. Nature's God intended for this country. And I believe General Flynn resonates with all of that because he talks about that. And he's not afraid to talk about his faith at all, which is another thing that our founding fathers talk about. But you bring that up and you can tell these demons, their heads start exploding and they, come out swinging and attacking. And I think now they realize you're putting up Donald Trump against Kamala Harris, the cackling hyena. She hasn't got a snowball's chance in hell, unless, of course, they steal it, which is their entire intention is to do that. So
on the 17 stuff and the drops early on when I started this movie, my take was like mission accomplished. I don't know much about it, but I do know I have many friends in Hollywood, many friends out in the country, wherever, of all ages, who became citizen journalists, right?
Yeah.
And what I did is I studied the data. I tracked very closely the ratings that would come out for from Lester Holt to obviously Tucker Carlson, who's still on Fox, to Lawrence O'Donnell, to Rachel Maddow. And there were people in their kitchens with better ratings broadcasting on Rumble than a primetime show on MSNBC. Right there, whatever happened, whoever is behind this movement, right, it was a huge victory for the patriots and for the truth, right?
Yeah.
And I think this there's nothing, and this is why and I've had these debates with everyone I made the movie with, which is hope and fear, right? Two of the greatest motivators, even if you're a football coach, right? You gotta get off your ass. You're gonna get, you're gonna get butt kicked, right?
Yeah.
And then another time when you read each personality and say, we've got this. We've got this. If you just do your job, we will win, right? And one of the reasons, there's nothing the globalists would want more than for us to tear each other apart and go into some sort of kinetic civil war.
Correct.
And one thing I've done heavily is I drive everywhere. I mean, I fly sometimes, and I just stop in towns and I spend time getting to know America. And there are people that if there's too much fear, which is used to motivate, right? Like we're gonna become a socialist nation. We're gonna. If there's too much fear, the people's potential for violence on the left or right rises. And maybe it's my calling. I want to calm that, and so I do to your audience. I say we've got this, but that does not mean sit on your butt. But it means be very vocal. If you're quiet, and I guess my actions were, I'll be voting for Donald Trump for the third time. In 2016, I kind of was very quiet about that, right, in Hollywood. And now's the time. Our weapon is our voice. There's been no better, example of that than you. You're brilliant and you're a hero in this movement.
I don't know about that. Just been around long enough to see some crazy stuff. And, you start to understand there's people that just do it because it's the right thing to do. There's people that do it because it's the right thing to do. And they figured out how to monetize the hell out of it. I wish I was in that category. I haven't spent the time to worry about it. And I find that, if I want to say something, I'm going to say it my way. I don't want it censored or watered down, or I don't want another person's input. If I'm going to put my name on it, it's going to be because I think it, believe it, and I'm going to say it. So, if I have to capitulate to somebody else because you can't swear or you can't do this or that, it doesn't work for me anymore. And, I think General Flynn understands that. General Flynn is not capitulated. He has had to sit by and take the lumps, as many people have in the freedom fight. And millions of Americans are in that same category right now. I would say 99% of America right now is taking massive lumps because of what's going on at our southern border and the fact that we have a complete corrupt criminal RICO syndicate running the United States, which, by the way, people, I'm going to say it for the umpteenth time, the United States is a federal corporation. Look it up, 28 USC 3002 15C. Look it up. It's all right there. The United States is a federal corporation. Don't take my word for it. The United States Codes defines it as such. The one thing they don't do is give you the metes and bounds, of the description of the actual 10 square miles that the United States is in. Again, another U.S. code. The United States is in Washington, D.C. That's their definition of the United States. We don't live in the United States. I live in Florida. Okay. And so General Flynn understands all this too. Some of the stuff is so over the top. And, again, when you start to dissect and parse out where we are and how we got here, it's so overwhelming that the best we can do right now is get people to watch Flynn the movie, General Flynn the movie, Deliver the Truth, whatever the cost, so they at least can now go, well, here's one guy I know I can trust. And that man has stood next to this man, Donald Trump, since 2016. And ergo, I'm going to vote for Trump because this guy says he's good. And this guy is, hopefully, as you've said, we will wait to see when he appears in his scene to return back to Trump the movie. Deliver the Republic, whatever the cost, I guess, is going to be the title of that one. How about that for a roundabout way to wind this interview up? But Scott, you're awesome. I love the fact that you are truly a hero, that you stepped out of the MK Ultra psyop world of Hollywood. You have a great career there, and I'm sure you're going to still have a great career, because when I talk to some publicists that are working with Hollywood 2.0, there's a space for people like you, and I think a much bigger, brighter space where you'll be even more impactful. And I hope to see more work coming from you. Is there anything in the future? Maybe is it Trump, Deliver the Republic, whatever the cost? What are you doing?
Exactly. And when I begin that thing, I probably will tell no one for at least 6 to 10 months, as I did with Flynn. But something you said about Hollywood, people are, it's another reason for optimism, because there's some people that are so trapped in that brainwashing that you need to give them that extreme hope that take the step. And, Hollywood is a city, it's a business of opportunists. They're very good people, but I always drive home. Do you want to be on the right side of history? Well, speak up, because you don't want to be remembered as someone who stayed silent.
That's right. Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, I think we've been speaking up for about an hour plus now, so we'll probably end it here. But I hope, Scott, that you do have something coming out, and I hope that I will at least get let in on the secret at some point, because I'd love to have you back on. And I'm a huge supporter of the work you've done here. I think it's fantastic. My husband and I've watched this twice now, and both times I'd cried. When Ivan starts getting choked up and I listen to Mike Flynn Jr., I'm like, man, the toll on this family is, I thought it was bad on mine. I watched my kids, or I watched them from afar grow up, because most of my life was spinning in my garage in my studio at the time during dinner hour. I missed dinners for, 6 years. So we've all had a, cost, but General Flynn has really weighed and bared a massive burden for this country. And I think the burden is still there. He's got to unburden himself with what he knows, but he's got to be able to do it in an environment that is going to allow him to clean this up once and for all. And I think your movie goes a long way to laying the groundwork for that case. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann.
It's been a pleasure. Okay, folks, that is, wow, impactful, amazing, incredible. If you haven't seen Flynn, the movie, go to flynnmovie.com, and it is literally called Flynn, the movie, deliver the truth, whatever the cost. And General Flynn has a lot more truth to deliver at this time. And for that, I'm holding my breath, frankly, for him to come back on the scene. I think, as Scott so eloquently put, we're in the Bobby Kennedy phase of this movie, and we're, getting our fill of Bobby Kennedy and looking at the agenda he's going to bring forward. Lots of ideas of what role Bobby Kennedy should play. But as far as I'm concerned, General Flynn will play probably one of the most important roles in a Trump administration, if there ever is one to play, which is to, really rein in this intelligence community, which has been rogue for a long time. We have, unfortunately allowed the intelligence community to control the Western civilization, essentially. And it runs the world, but it's disguised as, your health. It's disguised as, your food industry. It's disguised as your education. It's disguised as your entertainment. It's disguised as politics and your government. And the intelligence community needs to be reined in. And General Flynn is the one man I know I can trust when it comes to that task. So for that, I look forward to the return. In the meantime, I want to thank our sponsors. We've got MyPillow, Mike Lindell, again, another great guy under attack, $1 billion lawsuit still, hammering away at him. He spent millions. So if we can support him, that would be great. In the meantime, I'll play us out with little Mike Lindell. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. And thanks, as always, for joining us here on Steel News.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now. MyPillow.com